with our Houston Beekeepers Association. We're going to get started here in just a little bit, but while we're waiting for everyone to join, please take our poll. We would love to hear how long you've been keeping bees and where you are in your journey with us today. So we're going to get started here in a few minutes, but we'll give everybody a chance to get on to Zoom and get everything working on their computers across Houston. Thank you. Oh, looks like we've got some individuals who don't have bees yet, and some new bee owners and beekeepers. Lots of people between 2 and 5 years. And a couple that have been doing it since they could hold a smoker. Lovely. All right, I think we've got everybody joining. We've got a lot of answers on our poll. So we'll go ahead and get started. So welcome to Houston Beekeepers Association for our first ever virtual meeting. We're so excited for you to join us. We have a lot going on to share today. And thank you so much for taking our poll as we got started. So you can see we have lots of new people. We also have a big group that have been doing beekeeping for 2 to 5 years. And then we have some individuals who've been doing it much longer than that. So we have a great group on the Zoom today. We're really excited to have you. First of all, I just want to thank you, each of you. I know we're all trying to change our new normal into our stay at home. And we really appreciate you joining today since we aren't able to actually come together in person. But it's a great opportunity for us to try this out, and hopefully you'll enjoy our speakers today and connecting with other beekeepers, even virtually. So today we have a pretty quick agenda. Obviously, we have a couple quick announcements as we get started with our meeting. We have a wonderful speaker today, Chris Moore, who's going to talk about splits and queen cells. And then we're going to open it up to you to ask questions on our chat feature and ask questions of Chris and the members on the phone who can answer your questions about beekeeping today. So our quick announcement is to actually let you know a little bit about our HBA membership. For those who aren't members, there's lots of benefits to being a member with Houston Beekeepers Association. First and foremost, you get to see these great speakers and learn a lot about bees and all the types of things that come with beekeeping, like harvesting honey, using wax, and using honey in recipes. So we really try to make it a wonderful, engaging meeting every time we meet monthly. Right now, we're virtual, but obviously we come together monthly at Bayland Community Center as well. Also get access by email to the SCEP, which is our local newsletter. Keeps you informed, keeps you connected to other beekeeping education opportunities across Houston and in Texas. So you can continue to learn about bees and expand your knowledge about beekeeping husbandry. Also, we have the ability, if as you're a member, to rent the equipment that we have in inventory, which is a number of extractors that can sometimes be kind of expensive for people on their own. And you can rent them from us, as well as uncapping tanks and an observation hive if you're ever trying to educate others on beekeeping, and many other items. So we have lots of benefits. In addition, you can ask and request through our email address to be on the swarm list, which is a listing of swarm requests that have come into our inbox for Houston Beekeepers Association. So you can be on the front line of capturing a swarm if you'd like to get some freebies. So those are some great benefits, but most importantly, you're joining a community of beekeepers so that your neighbors, and let me tell you, there's lots of us here in Houston, can help you as you begin your journey, and also support you as you become a very experienced beekeeper. And obviously we can give back to you in mentorship. HBA membership is relatively inexpensive. Students are 15, an individual is 25, and a family is 40. So please don't forget, if you haven't had an opportunity, please follow the links on our Facebook site or our website to pay your membership for the year. So with that, I want to go ahead and move forward to our speaker. I'm very excited today to introduce you to Chris Moore of Moore Honey. He has been in the Houston area for many years and works about 2,500 hives across the southern Texas region, Houston to Beaumont, doing all kinds of pollination services, but most importantly, getting that amazing honey out of our region, and has lots of experience to share with us today. So with that, I'm going to turn it over to you, Chris.
Great. Thanks for having me. Thanks. This is kind of weird. I've never done this before, so it's.
Did we lose Chris?
Chris, are you there? Of course. Okay, well, we're going to give Chris just a few seconds to get back on. Well, so while we're waiting, Nicole, did any questions come on that we could address right now?
Yes. Hi. We did have a question, and I'm not sure if this is just in general or to Chris himself. Oh, he's back. The question is, how many frames of brood do you recommend using for a mated queen? They will be going in a nuke.
Oh.
So how many frames of brood do you recommend with a mated queen in a nuke? He is muted.
Well, we will save that one for Chris, because I do believe he talks about that in his presentation.
Okay.
So we'll turn it over to you, Chris.
Well, I missed the question. How many frames of brood in a nuke?
Yes.
Yeah, we will get to that.
Yes. Welcome back.
Thanks. I don't know what happened. Audio's okay?
Yes, we can hear you. Thank you.
Great. Yeah, I kind of I've done this talk several times over the last 3 or 4 years, so I kind of updated a little bit today. And I'm assuming if they have questions, they can type it to you, and then you can throw it at me. Is that right?
That's right, Chris. I'll be monitoring questions, and I'll butt in when necessary.
Okay, Nicole, I can't see you. Your camera's not on, but that's okay.
Yeah, that's on purpose.
Oh, okay. That's all right. Okay. But anyway, this is about splitting, which also is directly correlated to swarm prevention and colony health. So let me get into this. And like I said, if anybody has questions, we might cover it in a later slide, but you're welcome to type it out, and then they can try to get me, ask me along the way. So as I'm speaking in groups, I usually will take questions. So according to your poll, looks like a little over half are more experienced beekeepers, and then a little less than half are newbies. So if I got it right. So I may explain some of this in a little more detail since we have newbies. And of course, in beekeeping, everybody does things a little bit different. There's really not a right way and a wrong way. It's just a matter of getting to the same end result. So you'll get all kinds of different answers, no matter if you're asking beekeepers or if you're on the internet. Honestly, you're going to hear all kinds of things. And bees, a lot of times, they're good about not doing what they should do. It's like, okay, you know what they typically should do, but I've heard hundreds of times on things that they've done which are not typical. So, so I'm going to share with you some of the things that we do and what works for us. If you have something that works for you, keep doing it. So, but like you mentioned earlier, we run about 2,500 colonies from Houston to Beaumont area, and we're in 5 counties. And really on the commercial side, we're a little bit smaller as far as number of colonies on the commercial side, but most commercial people sell all their honey in bulk to honey packers, where we actually package and sell almost all of our honey that we produce. So our goal is to sell locally what we produce locally. And we're members of Real Texas Honey. That's programmed to promote honey that's actually produced in Texas and not what you see in the stores, which is honey in the US is now 75% imported. So anyway, that's enough about us. Let's see what we get into here. Our business in the calendar year begins with almond pollination in California. Commercial beekeepers, those of us that do this is my sole source of income. We cannot sit at home and make honey because honey doesn't pay the bills. The imports drive our market down. So we have to do pollination to make a living. So we take the same bees, we'll send them to California, pollinate almonds, they'll come home, we'll make splits, we'll make honey. In the summer, we'll send some bees to North Dakota to make a second honey crop, typically here in June, late June, July. It's hot, so they're not bringing anything in July, August, first part of September. So by shipping them to North Dakota, the climate, they'll make honey there all summer. And then we also pollinate some seedless watermelons out in the Panhandle in West Texas. So, so we're getting a couple pollination incomes and a couple honey incomes. So, and with that, we can hopefully keep the lights on. This picture of some bees that came back from California. The California almonds bloom, they start blooming about the 12th, 14th of February, and it only lasts for about 5-6 weeks, and then they're back here by the 20th or so of March. But the protein level in the almond pollen is real high, so the bees grow a lot on the almonds, and they come back and they look great. So getting a colony like this back in late March is a great thing, but it's also problematic in that these bees may be in the trees in April if we don't do something with them. And as you can see on here, they made a little bit of honey out there. They do not make honey on almond trees. They make enough to sustain themselves. And in this year, it was warmer out there, so you can see they made a little burr comb. We don't have any supers on them at all. They just go out there as double deeps, and then they come back as double deeps, obviously. But so we're going to talk about what we do with those after we get them back. We lose 40% annually, sometimes more, sometimes maybe a little less. So we've got to increase our numbers every year. Just to maintain our numbers, we have to split. So we actually make splits twice a year. We do it in March as soon as they get back. And then we will split about 800 immediately after we pull honey, which we pull honey about the 10th of June is when we typically pull honey. It may vary a little bit. So we're starting new colonies twice a year just because of our losses, which a lot of the losses are due to queen fertility issues. A lot of the queens, we used to get 4 or 5 years out of queens. Now we only we're lucky to get a good year out of queens, really. So we requeen almost every year. But anyway, I'm getting ahead of myself to talk about why we split. Obviously, maintain our numbers. If we want to increase our numbers for additional honey production, you obviously have to have more colonies produced to increase production. If we're going to do more pollination services, we need more bees. And if we're going to sell them, a lot of beekeepers, that's part of their income is they split, they raise nukes, and then they sell nukes. But by doing all this all yourself, you don't have to buy nukes. I mean, if you've got good bees and you take care of them, there's no reason why you can't start your own every spring. And the whole idea, keeping the queens young is keeping them productive and keeping them healthy. Your younger queens are basically egg factories, and those egg factories are going to produce you bees, which is going to produce you honey. So, and your younger queens are less likely to swarm. It's your older queens that like to swarm on you. So by splitting, you're preventing swarming, and then by requeening, you're keeping your hives more productive. So I hope we're doing okay so far. The first thing we need to do, everybody needs to do, is inspect and make sure. If you're going to make a split, you need to make sure you're splitting a healthy colony. You don't want to take a colony that's got European foul brood and split it and start another colony with European foul brood. You need to make sure you've got healthy colonies. And that goes back to hive management, which is a whole year-long thing. We do a lot of work in October to get the bees ready to go through winter. I actually don't look at them at all in November, and I check them again in December and January. And then obviously again in February, right before they go to California. So, but the Honeybee Health Coalition website is a great tool for beekeepers. It's got a great guide on there for varroa management. Varroa mites are our number one enemy. They host and spread a lot of our problems. A lot of the viruses and whatnot that we have is spread through varroa mites. So I know we treat ours. We have to treat ours. We have to have healthy colonies, which sick colonies, you might be able to keep sick colonies alive, but they're not going to be productive. They're not going to get out and produce honey. They're going to stay home and lay on the couch all day. So keeping your bees healthy is going to help your production. So part of that is somehow controlling your varroa mites, whether it be from a miticide or from a softer organic natural type product. There's all kinds of different things that website actually discusses, but keeping your mites under control is number one. There are a lot of people that don't know how to check for mites, and I get in trouble sometimes because I refer to those people as bee havers. They're not beekeepers because they don't know how to keep them yet. They need to learn. So I encourage you, if you don't know, learn and become a beekeeper, not just a bee haver. Bee informed partnership. We call them BIP, bee informed partnership, but they come out and they sample our colonies about three times a year. As a commercial guy, we have to pay to have them come do that, but we get results back from them, which is an invaluable tool for us to let us know how we're doing. It also compares us to other commercial people. Nothing's named, but it lets me know on a scale the job that I'm doing. But they have a great pamphlet, booklet that they've done as far as brood diseases, issues. And if y'all can get your hands on some of those are great tools to have. But if we're going to talk about splitting, we need to start with healthy colonies, such as this one. So the first thing is to make a plan. If you're going to keep your original queens, which when we get further down in this presentation, there's a second method I have for those who would want to keep their original queens. And what we do most of the time, well, depends on the year. Every year we do things differently. But this year we actually kept, it was about half and half, really. We kept about 1,200 original queens that were from last June. And then we started about, I don't know, 14, no, it would have been 18, 17, 1,800 new ones with queen cells. So we're going to be putting new queens in the majority of ours. But you make your plan which one you're going to do. If you're going to get, you can start with a mated queen that you can purchase, but you'll have to, if you're going to use a mated queen, you've got to schedule those queens. Queens, sometimes you have to wait until April or May before they're available. April should be able to find some queens. They're not too readily available in March. Queen cells you can purchase, or you can raise them yourself. They're real easy to raise, and we'll talk more about cells in a sec. But or you can just let them raise their own queen. That's the least successful, but you can do that. But and then I always recommend that anybody start their splits 2 to 3 days. Let them make the split, let it set 2 or 3 days queenless, and they're going to start their own queen cell. And then you can still introduce a mated queen or a queen cell. And the one that's successful first is going to take care of the other one. So, but you'll have a backup cell that they've started if your queen cell or your queen cell, if your mated queen or queen cell are not successful, you'll have that backup. Okay, and timing is critical. We only split, I would only recommend splitting in our area in March or April. If you've got a great hive in February, you could do it at the end of February, but if you're doing it at the end of February, you're going to have to start with queen cells because queens aren't available unless you're lucky enough to get them from Hawaii or South Florida. And if you do start with queen cells, you have to have drones for those queen cells to mate with. So typically, if our bees were not in California, we would wait until about the first or second week in March to make splits, just so there's more mature drones for the queens to mate with. So, and then that can go into April. March, April is your best time. It's hard to mess up a beehive in March or April. So that's the only, and we make additional splits about the third week in June, but we're using mated queens that we purchase out of California. So, and I don't recommend June for any, well, basically for anybody. I think needs to be March and April is the best time of year to do it. I wouldn't recommend any other time of year to do it. You can do it, but you really got to take care of them. So the queen, your choices of putting in a queen when you make a split, you use the mated queen, which is going to give you the quickest results in eggs. So the queen cells are going to take a little bit longer, 11, 13 days. And if you walk away, you won't see eggs for almost a month. The mated queens are more expensive. You're talking 18 to 40 bucks a piece, but they're faster. You'll see the eggs. She'll come out of that cage pretty quick, and you'll see eggs pretty quick. So, but like I was saying, the availability, they're not always available when you need them. If you get them from out of state, sometimes there's quality issues because they put them in in a cargo plane, and sometimes they get too cold. Sometimes they're in a UPS truck, they might get too hot. So there's issues there. But with your mated queens, you've got a higher success rate or higher chance of being successful starting your split. The queen cells in the queen industry, these in the picture are just about to hatch out, and they're known as a 10-day cell. And all you smart people that know that queens hatch out in 16 days, queen cells are started with a 1-day-old larva. So these 10-day-old cells are actually like 15 days old. So, but they're a lot less expensive than mated queens, $4 to $6 a piece, depending on where you get them, maybe a little more. And they're also really easy to raise yourself. You can take a colony, a good colony, take the queen out, and you can graft in these little plastic cups, which is not too awful hard. And you can generally, one queenless colony, you can start 80 queen cells. So y'all can get together and do them. If there's any commercial people nearby, a lot of times they're raising their own, or they're getting them from another cell breeder, cell raiser. And so they're readily, especially in March, they're pretty readily available throughout East Texas anyway. There's a lot of beekeepers in East Texas. And then your success rate by using a cell, that cell has to hatch, and then she has to go mate, and then she has to find her way back home without getting eaten by a bird or whatever else. Make sure she gets back to the right box. So your success rate goes down 70 to 85% success rate. And like I said, you need drones. So later in March, April is a good time to do that. And then you can do the walkaway and let them raise their own, which is the least successful. But it's also, there's also no cost. So we've done that in the past. Sometimes we've got hives that are about ready to swarm this time of year, late April. It's like we've got to do something with them, and we just bust them in half. How we split, you really, when I say divide resources in this slide, we'll get into that, but you've got to take an inventory of your colonies to figure out how much brood you've got to work with, to figure out how many frames of brood you're going to start with. So ideally, I like to start with at least 3. We have started with 2 in the past, but it takes a 2-frame split. It takes them a long time to build up to full strength. So you're not going to make hardly any honey off a 2-frame. 3-frame, you're probably going to make half a crop. 4 or 5-frame, you're going to do even better. So so ideally, you want to have at least 3 to 5 frames, and then you want to have some honey and pollen in there for them to eat. This is your normal configuration inside a colony, and this is what's typical. And like I said, sometimes I see it all off to one side. So this is not the way it always is, but typically your brood's in the middle. Melinda here that did this slide, I'm going to disagree with her a little bit, where she's got brood / honey in the orange, if you want to call it. I believe that should really be brood / pollen. Most of the time your pollen is right next to your brood, and then it's your honey. So I think those are backwards. And if I knew how to do graphic stuff, I would make my own slide the way I want it. But I found this on the old interweb, and it explains things pretty well. This is a frame of brood. Got a lot of cap brood in the center. Look, got some eggs and larvae, and then it's got some additional cap brood on the outside. Pretty much a full frame of brood. This is another good frame of brood. It's got capped around the eggs and larvae. And then it's got a little honey in the corners, which is good to see. A lot of times you don't see the honey if you don't see the honey in the corners, they need feed. They've got to have some food near the brood. That's what I refer to as the pantry, the cells right outside the brood nest. This here, a lot of people would dismiss this as an empty frame, but if you see a frame like this in your brood box and it's got that many bees on it, 9 times out of 10, that's a solid frame of eggs. Sometimes they're just hard to see through a veil, and on a cloudy day, it's hard to actually see that that's a full frame of brood because it doesn't have a larva that you can see or capped brood that you can see. So you've got to be careful not to dismiss a frame that looks empty. Here we've got some frame of honey with some brood. If I was making a split, I would probably count this as a frame of honey, not necessarily a frame of brood, because it has the majority of honey on that. This is a little closer look at the pantry that I was talking about, just right outside the brood nest, where you've got your pollen. And what you don't see, this must be, well, I don't know, there's not any comb on the outside edges over here, but what you don't see in this is any honey. So if I was to see this brood pollen, I would say this needs feed because there's no honey next to the brood and the pollen. That's really what you want to see in the pantry. You're not always going to see pollen because depending on the time of year, this time of year you should, but you should see honey right next to it. They should just be able to go right there, get what they need, get it right back to the brood. And you want to mix and match when you make your splits. Like I said, 3 to 5 frames of brood, and you want all stages of brood. So you don't want to put all eggs, all capped. You want to try to mix that up. 1 or 2 frames of honey, and then some pollen. If you've got a lot of pollen, you want to make sure those babies need they need honey and pollen to be fed. And then you want to make sure you cover that with enough bees to take care of that brood. Let's see. Oh, I've got a video. Let me see if I can figure out how to share the video. All right, where do I go? Where's my... All right, this is where I'm not tech savvy here. Let me see. Okay, here we go. Let's try this. I've lost Sandy. I don't know where she went. Nicole, are you there?
Yeah, I'm here.
There we go. Okay.
I took Sandy off, so you'd be the star.
You got any questions at this point?
We do have questions.
All right.
So if you'd like to answer some questions.
Go ahead, shoot.
The first one is, how many frames of brood do you recommend using for a mated queen going into a nuke? So you gave a good 10 frame hive example.
Yeah,
but going into a nuke.
3 to 5. Well, we don't use nuke boxes. We use just a 10 frame box to put them in, because when we make them in March, they're going to grow fast. So if you started in a 5 frame box, it's going to outgrow that really fast. I mean, so you obviously can't start 5 frames of brood in a 5 frame box. So it would blow up, within a few days. So we start everything in a 10 frame box. Actually, we make ours, and then we put the queen cell in, we give them a shot of feed, and then we go ahead and put a honey super on, because a lot of times they're making honey while that queen cell's hatching, and we don't want them to plug down. So yeah, I wouldn't even use a nuke box. So anything else, or are we ready to start the video?
Let's just go through a few, because you've discussed the age of your queens. So we have a question about that.
Okay.
The question is the short life of your queens due to the road trips or is that the standard lifespan for a queen in Houston?
Well, I like to think that our queens, okay, I don't know how to answer this. Well, I don't know. Y'all should not have the problems that we have, because even though right now at home, our bees are in a more natural area, we're not in an agriculture area. We're more piney woods and pastures, rural areas, from Houston to Beaumont. So when they're home, they're not exposed to a whole lot, but we do have to go to California. And they are exposed to, they spray fungicide out there on the almonds sometimes, and the growers sometimes like to throw in a little pesticide while they're spraying, which they're not supposed to do, but sometimes that happens. We go to watermelons, again, they spray fungicide. So ours are exposed to other things that yours shouldn't be exposed to. Okay, and I don't want to sound ugly when I say this, but we know how to identify some of those issues. We know how to identify brood issues to try to keep our bees healthy, even though we have these issues because they travel. We're doing everything we can to keep these bees healthy. We throw the book at them, where a lot of people that have bees in their backyard on the hop, they don't recognize issues and know how to take care of those issues. So I feel like commercial people do a better job of identifying problems and rectifying those problems than some of the smaller scale beekeepers. So I don't mean to be ugly. I just know a lot of smaller scale people that, in my mind, they don't know everything that they should know. And I know there's a learning curve there, but they should be striving to learn those things, not just having bees. Strive to be a beekeeper, not just to be a bee haver. So.
Well, we're all in this class together, so that's a good first step. All right, so I'm gonna jump off here and let you continue on with your video.
Okay. All right, and this is probably, I'm gonna guess, the middle 15th, 20th of May. I'm not sure when I did this, but this is just a couple of hives that we had at the shop that I did a quick video just to show how easy it is to make a split. The goal of this one is to take this colony, which is a double deep with 2 supers, and split it into 2 colonies. So I'll try to narrate a little bit while this is playing, and I'm going to speed this up a little bit. So there's a crazy beekeeper and his crocs right there working bees, which I don't recommend. Taking off a box of honey. Looks like it's about half full, 2/3 full. Another box of honey. It looks like it's about 80% full. We run 8 frames and a feeder in a 10-frame box. So right here, I'm removing the feeder. Outside is typically a frame of honey, which I've laid out there for y'all to see. Another frame of honey. And at this point, we're just kind of doing inventory. We got brood and honey. That one right there is probably one of those frames of eggs I was talking about. That's really hard to tell what it is. It's got some honey. It's got a little bit of cat. No, it's got some cat brood. That's probably the one I'm thinking about. Yeah, I'm looking at that trying to say, what is that? But that's probably eggs. Oh, dude. There we go. Eggs, brood, larva. Nice frame of cat brood. So that's pretty much everything in the top box. Looks like there's probably another frame of honey in there. Yep, another frame of honey, just a darker frame of honey. So I'm gonna take that box and set it off to the side of their original location. We always pull the feeders out first because it's less likely to where the queens are gonna be. Another frame of honey I set off over there. Now you can't see, that looks like brood and honey. Brood. So I really should have done a better job of showing those frames in the bottom box. The bottom box typically doesn't have honey in it, but the top box does. So I'm starting to put those things together where I've got equal, well, not equal, I've got equal amounts of brood in each box, and then we'll put honey in there. So each one of those, it looks like it's going to end up with 5 frames of brood maybe, and a couple frames of honey. We keep these on pallets. So I'm moving that box over. The original spot location now is empty. So those bees are confused, where do I go? So the goal is to have half of them go to one box, half of them go to the other box. Brood to the inside, honey to the outside. There we go. If you watch those bees in the middle, I guess if I get the, I don't know if I get that out of the way. Some of them are going to the left, some of them are going to the right. So that's exactly what we're after, splitting them up. So those bees are going to fly back to that original location. That's going to be gone, and they'll have to make a choice, left or right. Hopefully we'll get an even split, or close to an even split. Sometimes they're good about smelling the pheromone from the queen, so you might end up with more bees drifting to the split that's got the original queen. And what we'll end up doing at this point, I guess I lost that, is we'll let it set. There we go. We'll let that set for about 4 or 5 days. And then we'll go back and see which side's got the queen, because at that point, if you see eggs, it's going to have the queen. If you see one with no eggs and starting their own cells, then it's queenless and it's trying to start a queen. So at that point, you can introduce a queen cell or put in a mated queen. All right, now let me see if I can get back to PowerPoint, if I can figure that out.
So Chris, that video brought a bunch of questions.
Okay.
First, Joe asks why they're placed on their sides, which I'm guessing she means the supers. You have them like upright,
which I think maybe a lot of beekeepers maybe haven't seen before, because they usually have them horizontal and not vertical. So I think it's just a management kind of decision.
Well, you don't want to set them, you don't want to lay a box. Let me see if I can I get back to, let me see if I can get back to this. So I'm assuming.
It was right at the beginning when you first took the supers off.
Okay, so you never, if you set them on the short side, those frames aren't going anywhere. And these have obviously, the bees have sealed those into place. So if you set them on the long side, those frames can fall down in the back. And that's what you don't want to happen, because then you're going to squish bees. So if you set them up long ways, those gravity can't do anything at that point. Those frames are held in that box right now because I haven't broken anything loose. So they're not loose frames in a box, but you actually can stand a box up on the short side like that when they're loose, but you obviously can't do it the long way, because then they'll all fall down. So, and then we always stand up our frames here at an angle. So when we're stacking one frame up against another frame, there's an angle point there where you're not smashing bees. So that's just something we learn after years of doing it. You just know how to, I mean, there's always a few that are going to get squished, but that's obviously the goal is not to do that. So you learn how to do it where there's less casualties in your boxes. Make sense?
Yes. Another question, the pallet. We have a question, is that on a board, or was that hive directly on the pallet? Use the pallet as a bottom board. How does that work?
Commercial people do not use bottom boards. We use pallets. So they're directly on the pallet is the bottom board. And then if you look where the box is on the pallet, there's a metal clip that holds the box in place on the metal clip, so that box cannot slide at all. So we keep 4 hives on a pallet. So there's 2 coming in one direction and 2 coming out the other direction. And that's how we are able to send them to California and send them to wherever else we're going to send them, is we keep, we've got trucks and then off-road forklifts. So we go out at night, they don't fly at night. We pick up the pallet, put it on the truck, carry it to a staging yard, put it on a semi. Semis are loaded at night as well, covered with a net. And then the truck drivers have to drive from daylight to dark to get to their destination.
We have another question.
Okay.
You have a feeder in both brood boxes. How often do you feed? And with that many bees, do you add syrup in both feeders for that large of a hive?
Feeding is something I'm relatively new to Facebook. I've only been doing it for, I don't know, about 6 months or so, only because the youth pastor at church wanted me, said, hey, you need to do it because I'm involved with youth at church. So anyway, I've noticed a lot of pictures coming through different beekeeping groups. And that's the thing I've noticed the most is bees don't have enough feed on them. So, and each area is different. You have to see what the bees are bringing in. But it gets to that, let me see if I can, the pantry that I was mentioning earlier. Okay, take this frame on the far left right here. It's got brood and it's got eggs, but see where these bees are around this edge between the brood and the honey. They're like cooking right there. They're making, they're feeding those babies bee bread, royal jelly, whatever you want to call it, but they're mixing up honey and pollen to feed those babies. So that's why it's important to have that real close to your brood, so they can make that and keep them fed. So, but I've noticed a lot of pictures where these corners have all kinds of brood, but there's no honey on the corners, and you want to see that. Some people like to just leave a super of honey for feed, and that's okay. But on your warm days, November, December, January in Houston, we always have days that you can get out and open up the hive. But the best thing to do if you're going to feed with a super is take a frame out on a nice day and take your hive tool and scratch that capping off of a frame of honey, because what they'll do at that point is they'll go get that honey from that super, and then they'll move it down by the brood. So if it's caps, they're not going to touch it until they have to go get it. It's like a deep freezer in a detached garage. They're not going to go get it until they have to go get it. They're going to get what's in the kitchen first. So, so feeding, leaving super honey on is great, but you've got to uncap it periodically so they move it down where they need it. So, all right, what else? I forgot what the question was. I'm old.
You're good. You're good. There's some more questions about feeding, which I think you pretty much just answered your thoughts on providing feed during the fall and winter months. Is that something that you find yourself doing in your business, feeding during fall and winter?
Yes, okay. And I tell people this all the time. It's like, okay, when we, you know, we're stealing the bees' winter food. When we pull the honey off, we're taking their winter food away from them. So we have to supplement them to get them through the winter. So we feed them, like we'll make some splits in June. There's not much coming, depends on our weather. Sometimes we will have a little bit of honey coming in July and August, but it's pretty rare. But if it's coming in, great. But if it's not coming in, we'll supplement, we'll feed them. The ones we've started in June and July, we'll feed them. They need to have at least 2 frames of honey on both sides of that brood. So if not, a little more. But then in October, before going into winter, we try to do a lot, and a lot of the stuff we do is also preparation for keeping the bees strong to go to California. We want our queen to continue laying through the fall as long as we can, and through even on into the end of November. But we'll feed them a lot because we have a huge amount of bees. The population of the bees fluctuates throughout the year, and your population right now is growing because springtime, so all the pollen's coming in, the honey's coming in, so she's laying more eggs, so your population's going up, and it's going to peak in June or July at 50,000 bees, and then in July we pull the honey off, and if they've peaked, well, then they don't have anything to eat. So you've got to supplement, you've got to give them something to eat. So you supplement what they're bringing in with some syrup. So we prefer to do a 50-50 syrup, 50% sugar, 50% water. Unless they're really light and they need to gain weight, then we'll do 2/3 sugar to 1/3 water. So, but it depends on our flowers, our year, our weather. You just have to see, you have to inspect them and see what they have, what they're bringing in, and then supplement accordingly. So, and then like we do not leave a super on through the winter. So we feed them, we'll actually feed them in October, 3 gallons of syrup in October, and that gets them all the way through November. And then I'll feed them again in December, and I'll feed them again in January. But it also depends on the amount of bees you have in the box. If you have a lot of bees in your box, they're going to go through a lot of feed. If you've got a smaller colony, they're not going to go through that much feed. If you've got a sick colony, they're not going to go through that much feed. So you have to look at your colony and see, okay, they don't have feed, they need feed, but a good healthy colony is going to go through a lot of feed. And then we were feeding last week. It was the weirdest thing because we had some that we started, and then they were bringing in some honey. Thought, okay, good, we're done feeding. Well, then we pulled a frame of brood out, and there's no more honey around the brood, which means they're consuming more than they're bringing in. So we had to supplement them again. So now we're done. Our honey flow, our main honey flow should start here in about 10 days. So we're done. We're done feeding, and we've started putting on supers now.
And one last question on the feed topic. can you overfeed your bees?
You can. You don't want them to plug down. You'll if they have too much feed, you'll actually see some cells when your brood hatches out, you'll actually see some cells in the middle of your brood nest that has feed in it, has nectar in it. So, and that's where you don't want to see, you don't want to see it, because you want that cell there for them to raise more bees. You don't want to see. So it is possible. We call it plugging down, which if you don't keep enough supers on, they can plug down. If you use an excluder, they can plug down, because some bees don't like to go through an excluder and put honey in the honey super. They plug down. Queen excluders, often called honey excluders, for that very reason. Bees are real finicky when it comes to excluders, so I don't recommend anybody with the double deep use an excluder. We don't use them on a double deep. We'll use them on a single or a story and a half all day long, but never on a double deep.
Awesome. We have a question about how expensive that is for you to feed all that sugar.
My feed bill last year was $68,000.
Yeah. Okay.
How's that answer? Yeah.
All right.
But it's one of those deals when your business is to sell honey. You feed, like I said, when about the 10th or so of June, we pull all the honey off, and they need it. And generally, okay, we're pulling the honey and we're shipping those bees. We might send some to North Dakota. They're going directly into another honey flow. They're sending some to West Texas to do watermelons. They're on another slight honey flow out there, so they're bringing in honey. So while we've pulled that off, they have honey coming in. The splits that we make at home, if our weather's hot and dry, we have to supplement them with feed. So as unfortunately, we don't have, a lot of years we don't have July and August, the bees don't have any nutrition coming in at all. So not only will we give them feed, we might even give them a protein supplement, which is a pollen patty. But you have to be very careful with those, because you can do a really good job of raising hive beetles. So, all right, I lost you. You still there?
I'm still here. Yeah, hi. I think you're good. We did have a question. You're talking about, places you're sending bees. Do you have any issues selling splits from your all bees? Do people want those? Do you sell splits? How does that work? Do you want to answer that question? You don't.
No, that's fine. Can you say it again, because you broke up a little bit?
Yeah. Do you have any issues selling your splits from your almond bees?
No, we don't have any problem with that, because we don't sell any.
There you go.
If we had plenty of bees, we would sell some, but we're raising these to maintain our numbers for honey production. So we since 2006, we've never been to the point where we've gotten past our number that we want to sell some. So we're constantly fighting to maintain 2,500 colonies. There's some years that we've only had 2,100 for honey production, because we don't have enough brood to get to that 2,500 number. So when you're having 40% losses every year, we don't have extra. If I can get our losses miraculously down to 30%, we would have extra that we could sell. But we don't have that problem, because we don't sell. We have to use everything we produce.
Okay. And, do you want to continue? Do you have more stuff? Uh-oh. Chris
my,
good?
I think my internet's acting up a little bit. You caught part of that. Say that again.
I was wondering if you wanted to continue on.
Oh yeah,
I
sure.
think
If I can figure out how to get back to my,
you're doing great.
I can figure out how to get back to my, all right, where did my share thing go? Oh, there we go, share screen. Is that it? Yep, video, that's it. Slideshow from current slide. Okay, so right here are some splits that we made. These are finished products here. You can see the one on the top left up here is a little light on bees, but typically this is what we've got. We usually try 3 to 4 frames of brood and then 1 or 2 frames of honey. And then we'll wait a couple of days and then we'll introduce a queen cell. Now this slide on orientation, when we start ours, we take it away completely from the original location and haul it somewhere else so those bees don't drift back to a parent location. Like I said, we're pretty much knocking them all down to well, I don't know that I covered that. A lot of times when we make splits and we're not keeping our queens, we'll take a brood from 3 different or 4 different colonies and put it in a box. And that's how we eliminate our old queens. We let the strange bees take care of the old queens. So we mix them all up. They generally will eliminate the old queen and then we put in a queen cell. So we don't have to take the time to look for queens and kill an old queen. No, not any fun killing any queens, but it's what's best. But we let the bees do all the work. So, but you can do it if you're doing it. If you've got a couple hives in your backyard, all you've really got to do is confuse the bees. So you just change the orientation. If you've got 2 originals and you're going to make 3 splits out of 2 originals, you basically spread them out, and then of course your original locations will be removed altogether. So, and if you can also just turn, if you've got an entrance facing south, you can just turn it facing the east, and then that's going to confuse them. So you basically just have to confuse them where they're not all flying back to one box. And then I think I've got another slide. You can also switch if you end up with 1 box. Say you've got split 3 over here with way more bees than split 1, then you just swap locations, and then those bees are going to go, foragers are going to go off, and they're going to fly back. They're thinking they're leaving split 1, coming back to split 1, but then you put split 3 over there, so they're coming back home, and it's actually split 3. So it kind of helps equalize the bees. And those for you that love your queen and say, oh no, I could never get rid of my queen. She's been awesome for 14 years and I just can't ever get to. So you can make splits with pretty easy with keeping your old queens. You just basically do the same thing, but when you pull a frame of brood, you shake all the bees down in your brood box. So you can just pull 3 frames of brood out of your box, shake the bees off, pull a frame of honey, shake the bees off, put some empty frames back in that place, put a queen excluder, and then put a box on top of the queen excluder with that brood. And all your nurse bees are going to hear all those babies up there, and they're going to go up there and take care of them. So you can pull that top box off at that evening at dusk, or what's even better is early the next morning, and that box is going to be full of bees that are up there to take care of that brood. So that's how your original queen will be down below the excluder in your original boxes, and then your split will be on top. And then what do you do with them? You've got to move the old queen a little bit further away because they're going to smell her. They'll still smell her pheromones. So again, the goal is to get the bees to split 50-50. Or you might want 60-40, 60-year-old queen, either way. But you kind of have to move that old queen a little bit further away. So you don't have to haul them off and do a lot of funny stuff. It's not that difficult. And like I said, if they're not the way you like them, just switch spots, and you're going to confuse them, and they're going to go back to the wrong box, and then your population is going to be pretty much equalized. The hardest thing, well, no, this isn't the hardest thing. We'll get to the hardest thing. Wait a few days, and like I was telling you earlier, they'll start their own queen cell, and that's going to be your backup cell in case whatever you put in doesn't work. That'll be there. These are queen cells. We generally hang them between the top frames. We just set them in there, unless we've got a forecast where it's going to be down cold below 40. We'll actually take it and put it down in the brood where they keep the brood warmer. And here we are putting a queen cell in. We just drop it right in between the frames there. If you're using a mated queen, I've heard about this happening. The wooden boxes have a cork on both sides. The cork on your right, you're looking at this, is where they put the queen in the cage. You want to remove the cork on the left side. That candy's in there. It gives that queen an introduction period to those bees. So it generally takes about 24 hours, and those worker bees will eat that candy, and then they'll meet their new queen. So you want to make sure and pull that cork and let them eat the candy and not release her directly in there, or they can kill her. These are the queen cages that I prefer because there's no way to mess that up. That tube generally comes stuffed full of candy when you get it. Now this is the hardest thing. When you start a split and you put in a new queen or you put in a cell, you want to go check on it. You want to look at it. You want to see how it's doing, but you've got to wait and let that queen become established, or they can ball that queen. They can kill that queen. So mated queens will wait 1 or 2 weeks. Queen cells will wait at least 3 weeks. 30 days is even better. And it's real easy to check at that point, because if you wait 30 days, you're going to see cap brood. So it's real easy to tell if they were successful or not. And this is what you want to see when you pull a frame out. You want to see eggs, a nice egg in the center of each colony. Looks like she's laying good. If you see this, multiple eggs in a cell, eggs on the side of a cell, you've got a laying worker, and there's no way to, it's very, very hard to save that. The best thing to do is just shake all those bees out on the ground, and those bees will fly back to another colony. But once you get to that point, they're pretty much a loss. And this is what they look like. When these mature, they're all raised like that. And then it's not a problem reusing that frame. You just take your hive tool and you flatten all those things back out. And then your next colony will clean that up. In a couple of days, you won't even be able to tell. And hopefully this is what you want to see. Successful split with a beautiful frame of brood in it. This one's actually short some bees. I don't know if there's a picture I took or if I just got this off the old interweb. I'm not sure where this one came from, but this is obviously successful. And then again, this is one I started with. It came back from California, but that's obviously successful. You want to see good bees. If there's anything wrong with this one right here, is there's too much honey. So that, to answer your question about too much feed, when you start to see that, they need a box. So, but they typically do not make that much honey in California, so we don't want to. And it's funny that almond honey, when they do make a little bit of honey like that, it's fun to mess with beekeepers that are with you, because you'll look at that and you think, oh man, that looks good. It's the first honey of the year. And you like grab your hive tool and you're like, try that. And it's so fun to watch their face, because almond honey is the most bitter honey you've ever tasted in your life. It's horrible. So, we just let the bees don't mind it. They'll eat it. They'll build off of it, but it's fun to mess with people, because thankfully they don't make honey off that, because it's bad. And that's it. And then with my Real Texas Honey shirt that I'm sporting right now. So I think that's it. Yep, that's it.
Excellent. You have turned black as night, Chris.
I did. I don't know what happened to my light here.
Let's see. There's something that you touched on near the beginning of your presentation when you were talking about bee havers.
Uh-oh.
We have a question. Yeah, nothing bad. What is your
preferred method of varroa treatment?
Well, that's a hard one to answer. There is, I would prefer to use something milder like an oxalic acid. There's a hard time. There's a formic acid Mite Away Quick Strip, and then there's a thymol based product that are both natural, but the problem is they're not as effective. So while it's nice to use those, it's hard to get a good control in, and they're also very finicky with the temperature. They like to be used. They like, if the temperature gets too hot, it'll basically cook the bees. So you can't use the Mite Away Quick Strip, or some people use half a dose and they can get away with it. But we use an Apivar strip in the fall. It cannot be used with the honey flow. So honestly, our mite levels get a little bit high in the summertime, because we're going from a honey flow here in Southeast Texas to a honey flow in North Dakota, or to watermelon pollination. So usually by late August, our mite counts are kind of high. So there's not a whole lot we can do about it at that point. We can use Hop Guard, which again is not very effective, but it's a treatment that's okay to use during a honey flow and in high temperatures. So it's hard, because there's not really a great treatment for us to use. The Apivar works good, and we'll end up with pretty much a zero mite count by, we'll put those on in October, and usually by December, we've got our mite counts down to zero, and they'll stay there. We're starting to see some ones and twos right now, but we do the alcohol wash. So you basically sacrifice about half a cup of bees in the alcohol, but that gives you your mite levels.
We have a question. What does watermelon honey taste like?
That's a good question. I don't know. They don't make honey on watermelons. So the pollen is pretty much useless, because the protein level is real low. So a lot of times when we've got them out there pollinating watermelons, there's cotton, there's peanuts. There's not a lot out there that's got good protein content in the pollen. So a lot of times we'll supplement that with the pollen patty. So because it's not that great for the bee. But yeah, it'd be nice if they made honey off watermelons. But the neighboring cotton they make a little bit off of, but it's not very much. It's not even. It's about a third of what we'll make here.
Okay, I think that's good. We have a lot of people thanking you for your time. Oh, someone's asking what type of syrup you feed your bees. I think you pretty much answered that. 50-50, right?
Yeah, well, we'll use, we'll get tanker loads of corn syrup. Certain times we'll feed corn syrup. Certain times we'll feed sugar syrup. Just depends on, in the fall, they tend to store corn syrup better. So a lot of times in the fall, we'll use corn syrup, where in the spring times, we'll try to use sugar syrup, because sugar syrup they seem to build a little bit better on the sugar syrup and then store the corn syrup better. So depending on the time of the year and what our goal is, we'll use both.
Okay, and I have another question. What breed or breeds do you use and why?
We keep honeybees. That's our breed. We get queen cells from Bill Collette. Bill's from Jamestown, North Dakota, but he has a shop over here about 3 miles from me. But he gets his breeding stock from Marla Spivak at University of Minnesota, and she's developed a hygienic bee that they're supposed to be very clean off mites off other bees. And anyway, we use that stock from her, but that's just part of the equation. So I mean, because when she goes and mates, she's mating with 12, 15 different drones. So so you don't know what those drones are. So it's hard unless you get mated queens that are from an island and they're all the same. You know, you're going to end up with mixed breeds. So that's why I tell people I just keep honeybees, because no telling what they are.
And we have another question. What flowers for nectar are making honey in East Texas?
Right now there's some privet blooming, which is kind of a wild ligustrum. That's blooming. I am a failure when it comes to botany. I don't know all the plants. There's a bush. It's a dark green, gets to be about a 6-foot bush and about 8 foot around, but the flowers on there look like they almost look like a rose type flower. They got a big old yellow center in them, but those are popping right now. So I don't know what those are called. I should know that, but I don't. But but I've noticed it's one of those weird years, because we've had some cold nights the last couple of weeks, and a lot of these flowers don't like the cold nights. They like the warmer, humid nights. And we typically we can make a box of honey in April. And this year it's weird, because we were, like I said, last week we had to put some feed on some. So it's like, you just have to watch, because every year is different. So you have to look, you have to watch, and each location can be different as well. So you have to inspect and then determine what they need. You got to keep an eye on
them. Okay, so Nicole, is that all of our questions?
Yeah, I think we're good. Check in everybody's last thing. If you guys have more, just feel free to chime in, but I think we're good right now.
All right. Well, Chris, thank you so much. We so appreciate you taking the time, and especially since we're on Zoom and doing this very unique HBA meeting today. It's really amazing to be able to connect with everyone virtually, and can't thank you enough for taking this on to do it over the internet with us.
You bet. Hope it made sense. Hope it helped.
Absolutely. Lots of great pictures too of very full hives. I'm excited to see that. All right. Well, for those of you on the phone, thank you so much for joining us. We're going to share one last poll with you to see what you would like to hear about at our next meeting. Our next meeting is coming up on May 19th. Of course, we're not sure yet if we're going to be live in person or if we're going to do another Zoom meeting, but we will definitely keep you posted. Keep an eye out for the SCEP and all the updates there on upcoming bee education. A lot of different courses are now being offered online, so I highly suggest taking advantage of them. And a big round of applause and thanks to Nicole for setting up our technology today. Thank you so much. And you guys have an amazing week. Stay safe out there.
We have our 2 raffles we have to do.
Oh, right. I forgot. We have a raffle. Yes, we do. So for those of you who have attended in person to our meetings, we always have a raffle at the end of the meeting. Thank you for reminding me. That's like the most important part of this. All right, Nicole, you want to share with us our raffle winners and what they get today?
Yes. So our first raffle was for the top bar hive. It was out of the step. And the individual who won that is Scott Duncan. So, congratulations, Scott. We'll be in touch with you about how to get that to you. And I am going to do this live with our attendees and generate our winner. And I have to count, but I can do this. 1, 2. Deb Luck is the lucky one. She won our smoker, which is the second item that we have for raffling. So Deb Luck.
Wonderful.
Kidding.
Well, great. Well, Nicole will be in touch with you guys and we'll figure out how to get it to you with proper social distancing, of course. And anything else that you want to share, or Chris, anything else?
Oh, I'm good. I appreciate y'all having me. It's weird not being in person and being able to talk to people afterwards, and so it's this is, I don't know, this is odd, but I hope it was helpful.
I think it was. Lots of good questions and good attendance. Thank you all for joining. Anything else, Nicole, that I forgot?
Yeah, we just had some general questions about how many people attended. We got, I think, up to about 50 plus people, but we're currently at 45. So yeah, pretty turnout, not terrible for our first Zoom. Thank you guys. And this will be recorded and shared like we do with all of our minutes. So same way. That's it.
Wonderful. Thank you so much. This has been a lot of fun. I hope everyone enjoyed it. Have a great week, guys.
Thank you.
Bye.